Hello. Today I will be finally bringing you a much requested commentary in 0.6.0, which is of course the Zao, the tier 10 IGN cruiser monster. This ship is often quoted as, well, some people say it's what cruisers are supposed to be, other people think it's pretty overpowered. Overall, I won't be getting into that too much. I will mostly be showing off the build and the strengths of the ship itself. Now, first of all, of course, the Zao has multiple strengths. Oh, the most obvious one you will see if you look at the minimap, that transparent area, that's my concealment. Of course, when you run a stealth build, which is the most recommended build on the Zao, you are able to get an extremely low concealment. In fact, you get it down to 9.7, I think it was. Yeah, 9.7 is your stealth. And this, of course, allows you to do multiple things. Most obviously here, I sneak up, I keep a distance to my Benson, so if my Benson spots an enemy DD and engages him, I'm close enough that I'm basically about 10 km away from the DD, so I can support him in the fight and help my DD win the early battle, which is of course a huge help for him. Second strength is of course being able to stealth fire, as you can see here. If you keep enough distance, you're able to stealth fire, and of course the armament of the ship greatly complements this ability, as you have great arcs and your HE does a massive damage. That's 2 volleys, just HE 15k damage on a battleship. So your HE does massive damage, and you also have a very high chance of setting fires. Well, you're not really seeing it now, so well, there we go, 1 fire at least. But you have a very high chance of setting fires, and you have very strong HE, combined with these long flat arcs and fast traveling shells. And of course it's pretty obvious to see that at long ranges this thing is an HE and fire monster in every sort of way. So of course, besides going for stealth in this build, I go for Demolition Expert, because, well, fires are kind of your bread and butter. It's what you're the best at dealing, so buffing that even further is worth it. Even if they nerf Demolition Expert to only be 2%, it's still a nice bonus, because, well, it buffs something that you most likely end up using all the time. I instantly repair fire, something I of course don't really recommend, but in this case they are disengaging and I'm already undetected, and I had loaded AP in case they gave me broadside. I would of course try to delete one of the cruisers, because it's not just the HE that is strong on the ship, the AP is actually very strong as well. So hence why I'm looking here for a good opportunity, especially since it's a Minotaur. Minotaur is a very squishy cruiser, and these strong hard-hitting AP shells can cause a lot of damage. Oh, wow, no citadels. I think I shot a bit too far back. See if I get a second chance. Guy's turning away. Better just switch to HE. I was a bit greedy there. Honestly, might have just as well shot HE on a Minotaur, because he's so thinly armored that these hard-hitting HE shells would probably have done a ton of damage. But I was greedy and wanted the citadels, hence the use of AP. But of course there are some really strange builds I've seen recommended for the Zao. One of them includes IFHE, and I don't recommend it at all. First of all, 203mm guns, which is the guns the Zao has, are of course are guns that don't benefit much at all from IFHE. Again, oh my god, I just noticed, well, look at the sea line, you can see a Bismarck and Yamato is actually hiding really far behind us. They're sailing next to our carrier. So I give them a nice little compliment for their nice sailing back there, making sure to avoid any sort of combat in classic battleship fashion. Anyway, moving back to the thing, IFHE of course is completely useless on 203mm cruisers. Well, not completely useless. You can gain some benefits in penetrations against US battleships, but it's usually not worth it, and it's usually just a massive... Not only are you giving away 4 points, but you're also giving away 3% fire chance. So ultimately, those points are better used elsewhere. As I was saying about the Minotaur, I can probably do heavy damage with HE, as you can see here. No real point going for the AP when the HE is of course so very consistent in dealing damage. 6 people targeting me there briefly, so I'm gonna turn away, including a Kurfürst. This might hurt a bit. Yep, that hurt a bit, but it's not too bad. I'm just gonna angle and disengage. Now, you might see that I'm playing the ship a bit more offensively than people usually do. That's because I'm quite confident in this ship's ability to tank. The ship of course has exceptionally good armor. It's in fact very tanky, as even when giving broadside the ship is quite tricky to citadel because it has what people like to call troll armor. You get the weirdest bounces and overpens, and the citadel in general is quite hard to reach, unlike ships like Des Moines or Moskva that are extremely easy to citadel. This one is much trickier to do in that regard. Of course it has a low HP pool, but the low HP pool is kind of misleading because this is probably one of the tankiest tier 10 cruisers in the game, regardless of how low the HP pool is. Getting so far as harassing the Squadforce as much as I can. Sadly, the Turpitz is pushed far enough that I'm spotted by him, so once again I get targeted by multiple people. And that's of course something you should get used to. You have to make sure you're keeping yourself angled a lot in this ship because, well, this is not just the effect of me playing the game, but in general Zaos tend to be focused quite heavily because Zaos are considered a massive threat, so people want them gone quite quickly. Especially battleships are very eager to focus Zaos because Zaos tend to be the bane of battleships, meaning they burn down battleships quite a lot. Of course, the combination of heavy hitting HE, high fire chance, long range, and all this means of course that you are exceptionally good at dealing with battleships. But in general, the ship really doesn't have any weaknesses per se. One of the weaknesses might be slow turret traverse, but then again, expert marksman, recommended. I also of course run adrenaline rush because, well, as I said, I don't mind taking a bit of damage, especially in the start when I push up to support my deities and such. So losing a bit of HP just gives me a buff to my reload later on in the game. So I'm actually, the lower I go, the more damage I deal, and I kind of enjoy that perk in itself. Here I'm being very greedy. I'm trying to wait for this Mogami to give me broadside. You see I have an AP loaded. I'm wanting him desperately to give me that broadside. The torps are worth mentioning. They are F3 torps, 8k in range, hit very hard. You can launch 2 volleys per side. The firing ankles aren't the best, but if you do get a chance to use them, they can be extremely nasty. He really doesn't want to give me broadside, does he? Those guys, usually I would really hate going this out of position. You see how out of position I am from the rest of the battle. But the thing is, I got like 3 or 4 people focusing me. So I am basically distracting a third of their fleet right now because they are more focused on killing me than playing the objectives. And as you see, we are 2 ships down, but we have the cap advantage. So what I'm doing right now, right here, is basically I'm equalizing the score. Suddenly the rest of my team actually has a numerical advantage because of how many people are focusing me right now. So I don't mind too much. Mogami insists on being angled, so I switch to HE and I start melting the Hipper. Allows me to stay angled against all the people down south and the Mogami himself, who's shooting AP at me all the time. And I'll start working on this Hipper. The Hipper of course made a mistake of repairing the first fire. You shouldn't do that in cruisers. I say don't do it in battleships, but you shouldn't do it in cruisers either if you're in the middle of combat. It's a different thing if you're able to disengage and disappear in stealth, but if you're already in the middle of the fight, then it's not a good idea. Oh, and even more amusing, even the carrier seems to be going for me. So I have so much focus on me. Okay, this is probably not the Zao effect, this is more that people recognize me and they want to kill me. It's not uncommon these days that this kind of effect happens in games, that people really just want to go for me because they recognize the name. Hipper gives me broadside, not a good idea. The Zao AP is of course incredibly strong, just like the HE, and quite a punishing volley. 6 overpens, that's unfortunate. I activate defensive AA and turn away. Of course there are some people who use Hydro on the Zao, and I don't recommend that at all. If I had been using Hydro there, I would have been very much a victim, and using Hydro in general is just not recommended at all. Can I finish him off with this volley? Doesn't matter, I'll start focusing on the Mogami. Anyway, basically the ship has no real weaknesses, but I've seen people start using Hydro on it, and when you use Hydro the Zao, you literally create a weakness for yourself. DDs are not a problem, dodging torps are not a problem, your ship handles really well. The only thing you can't do if you don't have Hydro is push into smokes, so avoid pushing into smokes. Ta-da! Now you don't need Hydro at all. But for some reason I see people giving up defensive AA to use Hydro, and when you do use Hydro you actually create a weakness that the ship didn't have before, and that's of course the ability to get struck by a carrier. This Mogami sits on angling, by the way. So I'm just switching to HE. The HE, even at this close range, just I'm gonna deal so much damage to him. I mean, he can angle all he wants. I'm just gonna burn him to death now. I don't care about using AP anymore. If he's been angling the entire game, trying to get me so hornily, so I just switched to HE, and you can see 10k volley on him with HE alone. And when you have 40k HP, a 10k volley is a quarter of your HP burned away. So not too bothered. Here, AP would probably have finished him, but I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna burn him to death with HE. In fact, the Hipper is still alive, so I might be able to coordinate a nice little double strike for me if I do this correctly. Anyway, as I was saying, of course, don't use Hydro. You create a weakness where you didn't have one. You suddenly you become vulnerable to carriers for no reason whatsoever. So I don't recommend it at all, and I don't bother with it at all. So I personally stick to defensive AA, always have, always will. You are much more useful that way, and you no longer have any real weaknesses. You're strong against DDs, you're strong against carriers, you're strong against cruisers. You have no weaknesses, but as long as you give up your Hydro, then you become, then you create a weakness of your own. I do manage to get the double strike there from these two guys who really wanted to hunt me down and kill me. In fact, there's a Kurfürst back here as well. Of course, chasing Azal is never recommended. I mean, you see how mangled my hull is, but I'm still alive, and of course I kept angled the entire time, so I never ate any citadels, it never ate any real big chunks of damage. It was small chip damage that I was confident I could survive through, and such forth. Yeah, he pretty much confirms it. Will there be a video of my glorious death? It's people who, like, ignore objectives, ignore team play, ignore everything just because they want to kill me, and of course that's exceptionally stupid. So, and they kind of like helped their own team lose this game by doing that. The Kurfürst got struck by bombs, so he's used his repair, and since he's used his repair, I'm just gonna hammer him with HE, and of course already got 2 fires, trying to start a 3rd fire on the front of his ship. Kurfürst, huge ship, very easy to hit, very easy to set on fire. That's of course why I run IFHE on my Kurfürst, because I don't want what's happening to this dude to happen to my own Kurfürst, hence the reasoning for the tank build. I don't mind that I'm spotted or that I'm closing the distance because, well, he's taking so much damage, not just in pure HE damage, but you can see how quickly the fire is sticking. I got 3 fires sticking on him now, so if you look at the top right, the damage numbers, they just go up and up and up and up, and that's because he's eating so much of the damage. And the achievements just keep coming in Confederate with their high caliber. Basically, this is what I mean when this thing just eats battleships alive. This Kurfürst is just getting murdered in basically minutes, and he made a mistake of repairing the bombs, well, because he doesn't run IFHE, he kinda had to, he had a couple of fires, but against the Zao, that's just suicide. This ship just creates a barbecue, and that's him dead with an arsonist, which tells you just how much pure fire damage I did to him. Anyway, see if I can hunt down the Shokaku, or hunt down anything, but I think the game is going to end. The Terrapins on their team, this is what happens when you chase Flamu all over the map. Well, especially if you do it in something like a Mogami chasing a Zhang. That's just nonsensical. I mean, they pushed me out of position, but in return they placed themselves, all of them, out of position, so the trade-off, questionable at best. The game is gonna end, I doubt I'll be able to get anything more done here. I do of course run Vigilance on the ship as well, once again, minimizing weaknesses. You don't run Hydros, you run Vigilance instead to counter it. Anyway, the game does end, and of course damage wise we have 231k, which is pretty nice. A lot of achievements, of course Dreadnought, not unexpected considering how much I tanked. I sometimes see Zhao's in game with full HP, and I always wonder why. I mean, if you have a lot of HP as the game is ending, then push in, be aggressive. I mean, you have the HP pool, you have the tankiness. There's no reason to sit back just because you can do it, because the closer you are, the more damage you'll deal. That applies to the Zhao just as much as any other ship. So overall, people tend to play far too passive in the Zhao and defensive. Anyway, team score wise, only 2.4k XP. I only shot down 9 planes. The carrier did 1 strike on me and then pretty much abandoned that plan afterwards. We did get a pretty comfortable win. Looking at the detailed report, we can of course see HE, the AP damage was quite small in this game. You can get some high AP damage. I posted vids of Zhao AP just crushing. It's very, very strong. But this one ended up being very heavily HE focused, since the guys who were chasing me kept angling against me and they really, really wanted me. So I played it safe and burned them down. So 118k fire or HE damage and another 84k pure HE. Potential damage 1.9 million, did a fair amount of tanking there. I tanked 56,000 damage as well. So I mean, you saw how easily I was able to still to withstand the damage. That's why I don't really understand why some people play so very passive in the Zhao. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build for this ship. Right, as usual, I will start with the consumables. Premium repair, premium heal, those are the two I recommend highly. If you can afford it, run of course catapult fighter and defensive AA. Those are the two that synergize with this build. Main armaments mod 1 because you don't want to be losing turrets or torpedo tubes. Aiming system mod 1 because I enjoy the additional the reduced dispersion, but as on all cruisers, AA guns is a very valid choice, and if you queue with a carrier for example, then I would highly recommend using AA guns mod 2 because the AA on the ship is actually quite good. People tend to underestimate Zhao AA quite a bit, but 125 DPS on the long range high caliber guns is nothing to sneeze at, especially with defensive AA active, buffing it significantly. So AA guns mod 2 is a very valid option if you queue with carriers. So either one works fine, but it once again depends on your playstyle. Gunfire control system, aka more range, absolutely no question here. You want the range because your default range is pretty bad. Steering gears, IGN cruisers tend to lose their rudder quite often, especially the Atago, so I highly recommend it. Steering gears, the turning circle is pretty bad at 840 meters, so you want to be able to avoid those volleys. And finally, concealment for the stealth firing capabilities and in general the fantastic stealth of the ship itself. Captain perks, priority target, direction center. Most IGN cruisers, including the Zhao, want expert marksman, so this of course this build works on all IGN cruisers. Adrenaline rush, this is probably a late turn perk. Superintendent, once again tier 9, tier 10 perk for the additional heal. Demolition expert, vigilance, and stealth. If you're leveling a new captain, then of course try to get stealth fairly early before you move on to the other perks, as concealment is very important for IGN cruisers. This build of course works great with the Atago as well, just like it works with probably with any IGN cruisers all the way from Furutaka up to the Zhao, but this synergizes great with the Atago. It has the same consumables, it works very much the same. That of course means it will work great on Ibuki and so forth as well. So this build is overall a very solid IGN cruiser build, and I have enjoyed playing it quite a bit. Anyway, that was my Zhao commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.